Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is Friday, August 22nd. My name is Jose Vega. I'm a congressional candidate running in the Bronx in New York 15. Um, and It is good to join you once again for our weekly Poe reading. And as always, I begin with a briefing as to what's actually going on. And what is actually going on? Well, depends if you're like me and you watch a lot of different YouTube commentators right now, you might be getting mixed takes. And what am I referring to exactly? There was the meeting in Anchorage, Alaska that happened last week. Subsequently, coming off of that, there was a meeting in the White House with Zelensky and his nannies, the European leaders. Pictured, they were all sitting around Trump and around Trump's desk. It looked almost ridiculous. And the real big overarching question is this: what exactly is about to happen in the next week and 2 weeks? Will there actually be an end to the war in Ukraine? You may have heard that there were demands for a ceasefire. European leaders were saying we need a ceasefire before a peace deal. But Trump was saying, hey, they're fighting right now. Why not just end this now? And that's exactly the point. There were many attempts to sabotage a meeting between Trump and Putin, and of course, Trump, Xi Jinping, and Putin as well. So the fact that Trump was able to meet with Putin personally in Anchorage, Alaska, showed a very big, dramatic shift and forward momentum in a process that can actually create lasting peace. And what does lasting peace actually look like? It looks like something that Helga Zepp-LaRouche and the LaRouche organization have been promoting for decades now. One project being the Bering Strait. Some of you may have seen a video I recently published on this topic where I was actually praising Jamal Bowman for calling for nuclear fusion while also denouncing him for saying that Trump is trying to emulate Putin and be like an authoritarian. And in that video, I was talking about the Bering Strait. There's only about 40 to 50 kilometers between Alaska and Russia. It's a very surprising figure. Not a lot of people know it. And there were schematics designed by Hal Cooper, an American engineer who worked with the LaRouche organization, and he had designed concepts for what a rail line would look like between Alaska and the United States, and a rail line going all the way down to there was a discussion, a rail line going down to California. But beyond just passenger rail lines, you got to think about the production rail lines as well, the kinds of cargo that you could transport. And as I was in China, actually, and then I was in the Sichuan region, which is one of these central regions in China, and they have a very big emphasis on rail. They actually take train from China all the way from Italy, and they have products that get imported from Italy to central China. And now, you think about the sort of cultural exchange that happens. Chinese products get exported out to Italy. Italy gets products imported, imported from China, and then China gets Italian products, right? And there's this sort of, exchange going on here. And that's just one aspect of what this sort of revolution of rail can do in getting people to dialogue and collaborate. But the most important thing about the rail line isn't even the final product, it's the construction of these things. Because if you have Russian workers working with American workers, working side by side, figuring out the problems that will naturally come about and trying to make this terrain fluid and flexible, and make it so that you have to bore holes underneath Alaska, Russia, and underneath all this water that separates them, you are creating partnerships, you're creating dialogue. You're creating people that have to work together and think creatively together. And that is something that will most likely come out of this dialogue process if we push for that. We have said often, not just here at the Vega for Congress campaign, but, the LaRouche organization has said this, and all great minds of history have said this too. And Dr. King championed this idea. Peace is not a negative, peace, right? Just because there's no violence doesn't mean that there's peace, right? Just because people have decided to stop shooting at each other, that's not peace. That's just a cessation of fire. No, the opposite of violence is creativity. And only through creative process and creative pursuits, like joint collaborations in the Bering Strait, or even joint collaborations back to the moon and to Mars and to other places, that's peace. Working with other nations' scientists and putting our minds together to go to places that we never thought possible. That's how you create peace. That's the process we see ourselves right now with the Trump discussions. Now, I know some of you might be saying to me, but isn't Trump doing XYZ thing? Isn't he using ICE as a totalitarian tool? Yes, he is. Absolutely. Isn't he deporting all these people? Look, yes, absolutely. And the war, the genocide happening in Gaza is still raging on, which I think only highlights your role more. See, we're not Trump cheerleaders here, but we see a process unfolding that can actually end this war in Ukraine. We should take it. And Ray McGovern is the best out of all of us when Ray McGovern says he is not a Trump supporter at all. He is very critical of the president, as am I. But I think actually the latest figure I saw was 1.7 million dead Ukrainians. That has been the cost of this US provoked war. And it can finish now if we decide. And that's not to say it won't impact what happens in Israel and Gaza too. Because if the solution concept can work between Russia and the United States, it can work in Palestine and Israel. It can work in that entire region with that's not to say that it can work. It can work in other places. And we have to make it happen. And we have to make it a reality. That's why we organize. That's why we're here. That's why we campaign. So with that being said, I want to also just real quick, I forgot to mention the International Peace Coalition call today that had Scott Ritter and Ted Postal and Garland Nixon on as well, discussing these ideas. And Helga, of course, always giving her strategic briefing as well. History and life and reality is often full of contradictions. So I want all of you to not take away from this that I'm some apologist for the president, not at all. I think that we should see it more as our role in influencing current events. This war in Ukraine and the stopping of it is a process that goes back to 2016 with the WikiLeaks emails. And now we can finally put an end to it if we decide to do so. So I don't want to elaborate further because we have to get to the Poe class. And if people do have questions about that, you're welcome to leave me hate comments or questions, and I'm happy to take them up either at the end of the program or at some point. So, but with that being said, I am now going to introduce Dennis Speed to take it away. So, Dennis, are you there?
Yeah, you able to see me?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, let's just take something up because what we're going to do tonight, we've been doing the Mystery of Marie Roget or Mary Rogers. But the problem is that it's a long story. And in order to we've gone through a good deal of it. But if you haven't been on or haven't been following the story, the problem would be that we don't want to start it right in the middle. So we're going to propose that what we do is next week take an extended session. That'll be 2 hours or more and read the entire thing from beginning to end. We also can put in the chat or whatever the entire story linked to it. There's also an audio version if you want to listen to it in preparation. But that would take us a good 2 hours plus, and we think that it's right to do that. There's another reason for that, and that is that as of last week, um, everything shifted worldwide because of the meeting with Trump and Putin, which was not about Ukraine. Let me repeat, the meeting was not about Ukraine. The fact that everybody is talking about that puts everybody on not only a lower level, not only in the past, but completely outside of the domain of what's actually happening. You're operating in a lower realm. How people like to talk about the deep state. Noam Chomsky talks about deep structures and language as well. I'm not a fan of Noam Chomsky by any means, but he does understand something that people never pay any attention to, because you'd have to read his book, Aspects of the Theory of Syntax, to actually understand Noam Chomsky, who is not primarily a political figure at all, but he does understand some things about language. Without understanding those things about language, you don't really understand much at all about what's happening in politics. It's not just a matter of manipulating for the purpose of getting a result. It's not that. It's there is that element, but there's also the matter of understanding how people think, what they think, whether they know it or not, and that's what the science of the study of language, which is not linguistics, but is actually more correctly called philology, and that's not linguistics. That's a different thing. This, by the way, is not either, has nothing to do with artificial intelligence or what people talk about as computer language, which is a much lower level. And despite what you're told about how computers can think and outthink people and all that stuff, no, that's just people that believe that their bestial ideas are human. There are a lot of people that do, like the guys in Silicon Valley that talk about transhumanism and don't understand that those ideas are only worthy at best to mutated beasts, but they think that's the highest level of human intelligence because, of course, these are their thoughts. Therefore, of course, they think they're the most intelligent people that have ever lived, and therefore they think they're more intelligent than you, and they prove that because they have more money than you. See, and this is what is not only dooming the human race, but the problem is that they're really stupid, and it's their stupidity that's dooming the human race. Now, unfortunately, because of the lack of confidence that people have had in their own abilities to think for a long time, you get a situation where the population, uh, partially because of its education and partially because of fear induced by assassinations, multiple assassinations. You've sired a kind of a nation of cowards generally and fools. Not because people are not fools because they wish to be fools, but as in a concentration camp or a city that's been occupied by a ruthless army, which is shooting at everybody and killing everybody and doing that in an unceremonious way. What happens is that people begin to act like idiots as a way of protecting themselves and hoping they may survive. You have a lot of that in many countries. You have a lot of it in this country. And as a consequence, people speak in idiotic ways, like saying, "Well, how can Trump be right about this, but he's wrong about everything else," or something like that. And really, what they're describing is, "I'm too afraid of the prospects of the future, period, from anyone, and therefore I'm going to now make a statement which is actually not that it's stupid, but it's a lie." Most of the statements being made by most people are lies. They're lying because they start from the assumption that power is the same as force, and they do that because of the same reasons that people in a city that's been occupied say that, or people in a concentration camp. You say power is force because, for example, if I say the wrong thing, someone will shoot me in the head right now. And we can say that the truth is more powerful than force, but in practice, what will happen is I'll tell the truth and then I'll be dead. A bullet will appear in the back of my head. Therefore, I will say something which I know is a lie. For example, "Good morning, I'm your friend." And you will know that this is a lie. You're only saying it because you want to stay alive in a circumstance of oppression. And whether that's you're talking about the conditions of black chattel slavery in the South in the 19th century, or you're talking about the conditions of life in various in neighborhoods in the United States today and in other locations where people are doing that kind of lying to try to stay alive in various ways. Or you're talking about Gaza, where that kind of thing is forced to go on. Uh, 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 that's a world in which people lie in order to avoid responsibility. Just like most Americans are lying about the fact that they're not responsible for what's going on in Gaza. They are responsible. Did they do it? Yes. Did they do it directly? No. But by lying about the way in which the culpability for that crime actually is being manifest, that's how it works. So we don't want to lose too much more time. So let me just say something about this issue of war and about the notion here. No one ever wins a war. Say, wait a minute. Fascists, by killing people, win. Yeah, well, except that if you look at the history of fascism and you look at what kind of societies they create, and then you look at what happens to those societies invariably end up cannibalizing themselves. The same behavior that's used to subjugate a population is then used to self-kill, cannibalize the society itself in every case. And whether you're talking about earlier empires like Rome, which was nothing but decay, it was never a civilization at any point. The Roman Republic never had anything actually good about it, not as a system of government. It had people in it that may have been good people, or may have been people who had, let's say, a code of conduct and ethics that they carried out. And, they may have been self-effacing, they may have been self-sacrificing, but it's sort of talking about Sparta, like Sparta, which had nothing to recommend it as a society whatsoever, though the individual Spartans may have had a certain quality. For example, they were great heroes at Thermopylae, but they didn't show up in Marathon earlier, 10 years earlier, when they needed to be there. And the Athenians went there without them and defeated the Persians without them. So the notion that the Spartans were the greatest warriors of Greece is bullshit. And the reason that it's pushed is because the Spartans were largely stupid. They were very good at killing, but they were not very good at civilization. The Greeks were. One of the reasons for that was that the Greeks had invented tragedy as a way of qualifying the otherwise cowardly and superstitious Athenian population to finally confront the Persians a decade after drama began to be created. This was about 500 BC, approximately, when the Athenians knew that they were going to be fighting the Persians, but they also knew that they had a population unable, morally unfit to defeat the Persians. And the tragedy was invented. A drama was invented in that sense, tragedy, this specifically. The Athenian form of tragedy, let me say. I'm not saying no society ever had practice of tragedy or drama before the Greeks. I'm not saying that. I'm sure that certainly existed in China, existed in different places and within the African continent, particularly in Southern Africa. But we don't have those surviving. And even in the case of the Greeks, you take somebody like Aeschylus, who wrote at least 92 plays that are known, only about 8 or 9 of those survive. So, a lot of this is simply lost. The only thing you can win is you can win peace. And to win the peace, you have to be able to think the way that Alexander Hamilton thought and George Washington and Alexander Hamilton thought. That's why you had the government that you had. It wasn't only them, but they had to implement the government that got passed into law through the Constitution. It had to be manifest. It had to be personified. And that's what the first American presidency was. And that's what the four reports that Hamilton wrote, that's why they're superior in their discussion of economy to anything written by Karl Marx and to anything written by anybody that came after them. Adam Smith, of course, was simply an obscenity. So there's nothing, America is not based on Adam Smith or the Wealth of Nations or anything that the Trump people, or for that matter, the Democratic Party talks about. In no way is our economy based on any of that stuff. No, our economy is based on an invention, which Hamilton didn't do just out of his head, though he was responsible in the same way, in one sense, that earlier Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence, which was informed by a committee, and the Gouverneur Morris draft of the Constitution was informed by a committee. Hamilton's writing of the reports, which he did, and he's the one that formulated it, were informed by earlier, particularly Benjamin Franklin, and earlier ideas. Now, those reports are called the Report on Public Credit, the Report on the National Bank, the Report on the Constitutionality of the National Bank, and the Report on Manufactures. If you read those 4 reports, that's the peace. That is the American Revolution. not the battles. The battles are important to get to where they had to get, but the battles are a negation of the power of the force of the British Empire, and substituting that dominance of force through a war, you then had to establish the state, and the state is the actual revolution. Those documents, of course, the Constitution also, but which made these documents possible. But those documents are the actual winning of the American Revolution. Nobody teaches this in the same way that people refuse to teach Poe. And the important thing here is to try to read them, work through them, study them. But to do that, it helps to have read things like Edgar Poe's work. And what we're going to do today, because of both time and because of the need to try to keep people, trying to think through, what actually happened between Trump and Putin. You can't try to analyze that based on anything you're reading in the newspapers. These people are both illiterate and morally incompetent to either survive or even to speak to other human beings. On all fronts, Wall Street Journal, all this stuff. It's just morally, you should take a shower after reading most of this stuff. The bloggers are somewhat better purely because they don't pretend to be authorities most of the time. They've usurped a certain kind of authority that they can't handle, but they're not trying to lie, whereas the others just lie by dint of job description. New York Times and people of that ilk. Time, these magazines, Newspeak, or these other things. The Wall Street Urinal. That's what these things are. Poe, was born in 1809, and he began his career as a writer, as a poet. Actually, still at West Point. He first published a group of poems when he was 18. He published some things slightly earlier, but basically when he was 18 years old and still at West Point. The people there supported his first printing of these works, and then a little bit later, he kept writing. And what we want to do today is to take some of the poems that he was writing when he was 18 years old and when he was 20 years old. When he was 18 years old, it was 1827. Then there's a poem from 1829 and some other poems that we're going to go through. So let me yield now, and we should go to that, Jose.
Okay, let's do it. So I guess we have the first one here, which is Dreams. All right, so we're going to bring Kynan up here, and then we're just going to read these in a sequence, right? We're just going to go one after the other?
Yeah, unless he has something to say when he finishes reading, for example, and people can say something, you just read something, maybe there's something to say about it.
All right, no problem. Just want to, all right, come on, Kynan. Okay. I'll put it up on the screen for people.
Should I just go or wait for you to do that?
It's up.
Okay. So this is Dreams by Edgar Poe. Oh, that my young life were a lasting dream, my spirit not awakening till the beam of an eternity should bring the morrow. Yes, though that long dream were of a hopeless sorrow, 'twere better than the cold reality of waking life, to him whose heart must be, and hath been still, upon the lovely earth, a chaos of deep passion from his birth. But should it be, that dream eternally continuing, as dreams have been to me in my young boyhood, should it thus be given, 'twere folly still to hope for higher heaven. For I have reveled when the sun was bright in the summer sky, in dreams of living light and loveliness, have left my very heart in climes of mine imagining, apart from mine own home, with beings that have been of mine own thought. What more could I have seen? 'Twas once, and only once, and the wild hour from my remembrance shall not pass. Some power or spell had bound me. 'Twas the chilly night came o'er me in the night, and left behind its image on my spirit. Or the moon shone on my slumbers in her lofty noon too coldly. Or the stars. However it was, that dream was as that night wind, let it pass. I have been happy, though, but in a dream. I have been happy, and I love the theme. Dreams, in their vivid coloring of life, as in that feeling, shadowy, misty strife of semblance with reality, which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love, and all our own, than young hope in his sunniest hour hath known.
You meant to say fleeting.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
What did you? I don't know, but you said something like the opposite of fleeting.
Oh.
Because you meant to say as in that fleeting, shadowy, misty strife. Oh, you said feeling.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Does anyone?
Yeah. Do you have anything?
I don't have anything to say, but does anyone else have any particular thoughts on the poem?
No. Let's just go on to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. The second poem we are going to read is, I got to hear, Evening Star. And I will pull it up here. Give me a second. I should have. All right, here we go. Share this tab instead. And I hope people can see that. Yep. All right, Evening Star. 'Twas noontide of summer and midtime of night, and stars in their orbit shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon, mid planets her slaves, herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gazed a while on her cold smile, too cold for me. There passed as a shroud a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee. Proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be, for joy to my heart is the proud part thou bearest in heaven at night, and more I admire thy distant fire than that colder, lowly light. Mm. Mm. As Evening Star, I don't have anything to say on it. I think that was, yeah, no. All right. I think we should just move on to the next poem. Yeah, okay. You ready, Lynn? Okay.
I'm going to be reading Israfel. And boy, this is bright. Okay, Israfel. The poem begins with Poe begins it with a quote. And the angel Israfel, whose heartstrings are a lute, and who has the sweetest voice of all God's creatures. And that's a quote from the Quran. In heaven, a spirit doth dwell, whose heartstrings are a lute. None sing so wildly well as the angel Israfel. And the giddy stars, so legend tells, ceasing their hymns, attend the spell of his voice, all mute. Tottering above, in her highest noon, the enamored moon blushes with love, while to listen, the red levin and the rapid Pleiads even, which were 7, pauses in heaven. And they say, the starry choir and other listening things, that Israfeli's fire is owing to that lyre by which he sits and sings, the trembling, living wire of those unusual strings. But the skies that angel trod, where deep thoughts are a duty, where love's a grown-up God, where the hoary glances are imbued with all the beauty which we worship in a star. Therefore, thou art not wrong, Israfeli, who despises an unimpassioned song. To thee the laurels belong, best barred because the wisest merrily live and long. The ecstasies above with thy burning measures suit, thy grief, thy joy, thy hate, thy love. With the fervor of thy lute, well may the stars be mute. Yes, heaven is thine, but this is a world of sweets and sours. Our flowers are merely flowers, but the shadow of thy perfect bliss is the sunshine of ours. If I could dwell where Israfel have dwelt, and he where he might not sing so wildly well a mortal melody, while a bolder note than this might swell from my lyre within the sky. I'll say a couple of things about it because I just love that poem. Israfel is one of the 4 archangels in Islam in the Quran. And he's the one who's charged with having the responsibility of blowing the trumpet at the last judgment. And he also, obviously, he's a musician. Has the sweetest voice of all God's creatures. I mean, so much so that he can cause the planets, the moon, the stars, etc., to stand still and listen to him. But Poe, and I think I don't know, we could say many things about it, but when you think about the notion of mankind being defined by creativity, and the idea of Poe himself or any poet actually creating something with this kind of beauty to think about. And I think this is really I think it's really a tribute to that power that we as human beings possess, and which people have to come to understand. So, I really like this idea of Poe, or the poet, changing places with Israfel, and saying that perhaps something even more beautiful, even more bold, would take place if he, as a human, were to exchange places with this archangel. But it has to do with this question of creativity. So anyway, that's all I'll say about it now.
And I think there's Hold on, I gotta pull it up.
Oh, and say that we have questions.
Okay, so I think we do have a few questions coming in, but I'm gonna do the last of, and I would encourage more people to ask questions, but I'll just do the last of the poems, and then we're going to move on to discussion afterwards. So we're just gonna pull it up. We're doing Alone. Yeah. Okay. From childhood hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source, I have not taken my sorrow. I cannot awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. In all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form, when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view.
You come and sit next to you. I'll grab a chair over there.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So first, I want to I kind of want to go back. There's clearly a recurring theme among all of these. I mean, the first one was about here. Move over. Here we go. We improvise here. The first one was about. Well, actually, how do I want to do? I want to. Well, there was a question which was about the evening star. What is the colder, lowly light? And that was in the evening star here. Which actually, there were a few questions I had beyond that too. I want to go back here. Now, obviously, we read all four of those, and each of them talked about stars in one way or another. But there was a specific question here about then that colder, lowly light. But before we get there, I wanted to just first ask what is noontide of summer? Does that mean like it's the middle of the summer? Like it's a noontide of summer? We're in the
evening star, right?
Evening star, yeah. It's right here. Yeah, here. So it's noontide of summer and midtime of night. So midtime of night, I think, is more obvious because that, it's midnight.
Mm-hmm.
But noontide, I think, is halfway of the summer, peak summertime.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right? And stars in their orbit shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon. Shone paler through the light of the brighter. Oh, and also evening star, by the way, the reference to Venus. I don't know if people know that, by the way, but evening star is supposed to be Venus. I mean, just in general, when people refer to the evening star, they're referring to the planet Venus because when it starts getting dark, the first visible star you can see is Venus because of its proximity to Earth. It's the closest planet to Earth. And it's the second planet in our solar system. And when it starts to get dusk, you can see that. So the poem is titled Evening Star. But Ashley was asking then about the end here. Thou bearest in heaven at night, and more I admire thy distant fire than that colder, lowly light. But you have any thoughts, Kynan?
Well, I don't have too much to share. I'm still kind of just contemplating what
Sure.
all these mean. But I mean, there's what in the evening star. It's clearly talking about astronomy, right? You mentioned the evening star and Venus, but I also think it's linked with the imagination as well. Like, you know, in dreams, that's associated with the heavens,
Yeah.
right? And there's clearly a link, I think, between what's going on in Poe's mind, you know, in the imagination of the poet and the stars. That's that's probably all I can really give. But
Well, yeah, because here in dreams he also evokes the moon. Or spell had bound me, 'twas the chilly wind came o'er me in the night, and left behind its image on my spirit. Or the moon shone on my slumbers in her lofty noon, too coldly. Or the stars, however it was, that dream was at that night wind, let it pass. I have been happy though, but in a dream. Yeah. Lynn, if you have any other reflections,
Yeah.
by the way, you're welcome to come up and share them. But then alone, I think kind of takes a different theme, no? I don't think it's as optimistic as the other ones.
yeah, it's about Poe's youth, right?
Is it?
Childhood hour I have not seen as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passion from a common string.
Yeah. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from the same. I mean, okay. Well, I was gonna say that doesn't just means he was different, but then it says, "From the same sorrow I have not." Oh, from the same source, I have not taken my sorrow. Okay. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone.
And then this is where the shift happens.
Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed me flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form when the rest of heaven was blue of a demon in my view. I don't get it. Well, obviously the cloud took the form of a demon in his view.
Yeah, why is that?
From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff or of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold. Hmm. I mean, you look at the way he's describing the sky here and his environment here. You know, he's obviously talking about having a rough childhood, and it's not. There's no stars. It's about clouds blocking everything. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, lightning in the sky as it passed from the thunder and the storm, and the cloud that took the form of a demon in my view. Yeah, I think that, you know, it's just, I think when Poe talks about stars and the sky and being able to see them, he has a more optimistic view of whatever he's talking about. But here he's describing hell.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Lynn?
No, I keep thinking.
Here, come up here.
Can you come up?
It's not that. I'm still thinking about it, but what I keep thinking of is those stories that we read. Remember at the very beginning of the class, the story called the Shadow,
Yeah.
and then there was a parallel one that went with it. Remember the one where he's wrestling? There's trying to remember exactly, but there's a man there, and then there's this awful demon that's there. And anyway, this one reminded me of that in particular.
Hold on. I think there's a good comment here by Isaiah that when Kynan and I were discussing alone, his inner struggle to be creative and not think what others thought just because the group thought it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he also said this recurring theme of what he saw when he was young and as he got older. How are we supposed to read poetry? I mean, when we're younger, we think a rhyme scheme is beautiful, but as we got older, it changes. Okay.
I mean, the more I look at the first one, it also seems to be about the same kind of idea, or related at least to the idea of in Israfel, where he's talking about the idea of dreaming. So if you were to substitute for that, let's say, imagination, right, which really is eternal if you keep it eternal. And because he says at the end, I have been happy and I love the theme, dreams in their vivid coloring of life, as in that fleeting, shadowy, misty strife of semblance with reality, which brings to the delirious eye more lovely things of paradise and love, and all our own. So it's again, it's our, why is it our own? Because he dreamed them, he created them. And he says that that is something greater. Well, I'll just read it. Then it's something more lovely of paradise and love and all our own than young hope in its his sunniest hour hath known. So he's saying that there's something in creativity that's even more, that's, well, not even more beautiful, but at a point of maybe despair, in the middle, chilly wind that came over him, etc. These periods where he's not been optimistic. And he said, even in that situation, let it pass. I have been happy, though, but in a dream.
Mm. Mm.
So what's the source of the happiness? It's creativity.
Now I want to read a dream within a dream. Any other thoughts, Suzanne? I wanted to go over some of these references here in Israfel. Maybe you can tell us more, Lynn. But in Israfel, he talks about with the rapid Pleiades, even, which were 7.
I think these are the
Yeah, it's right here, tottering above in her highest noon. The enamored moon blushes with love, while to listen the red levin with the rapid Pleiades, even, which were 7, pauses in heaven.
Are those the planets?
I think it's the
No, the Pleiades. No, it's the Pleiades, isn't it?
Yeah.
1, 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's the Pleiades are known as the seven sisters.
Yes.
Yeah, you can put. Oh, you've got it up.
Got it up
It's
right there.
the star cluster in Taurus, the constellation. And they say in Greek mythology, it's depicted as the seven daughters of the Titan Atlas, which is, of course, holding up the world, and the sea nymph Pleione.
Leon.
Pleon. Yeah, maybe it's Pleon. Okay.
Oh, actually, I had one question also about Israfel and I guess the fourth stanza. But the skies that angel trod, where deep thoughts are a duty, where love's a grown-up god, where the hoary glances are imbued with all the beauty, which we
Hoary, it just
Hoary.
means
Yeah, what's
old.
that? Old.
Old in the sense of ancient. Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to share, Lynn?
Well, I think his toast to Israfel is interesting.
His toast?
Yeah, where he says, "To thee the laurels belong." It's like a toast. Best bard, why? Not because he sings them most beautifully, but because he's the wisest. So that's interesting.
Where's the toast? Where did you see that?
In the middle, therefore thou art not wrong,
Ah,
Israfel, who despises an unimpassioned song. To thee the laurels belong, best bard, because the wisest merrily live and long.
The ecstasies above, with thy burning measure suit, thy grief, thy joy, thy hate, with the fervor of thy love, with the fervor of thy lute. Well may the stars be mute. I don't know what that means.
You said you know what that means.
I said I don't know.
Oh, well, he's just referring to what happened earlier, that the starry choir, all the heavens.
Oh, they all stop and
they all stop and they're listening to Israfel. And they say, he's also has this lyre with him.
Well, but I like the next line. Yes, heaven is thine, but this is a world of sweets and sours. Our flowers are merely flowers, and the shadow of thy perfect bliss is the sunshine of ours. Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
great line.
Isn't it beautiful? So that's what he's talking about. If he
Your
could change
shadow is our-
places, I don't know if this is exactly how it works in Islam, but this idea of man in the image of God. And so he's saying, in the sense of the creative capacity of a human being. And so Israfel is obviously, he's an angel, he's a divine creature, but the poet is saying, if I could dwell there, maybe my poems, my melodies, my dreams, even it would be, if we change places, I could be greater even than Israfel.
And he wouldn't sing so well.
Right.
It's kind of.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
That's a great. The shadow of thy perfect bliss is the sunshine of ours. Well, we've got 2 minutes to 7, so I got to be responsible here. And
It's Leibnizian, actually, also.
it's Leibnizian. Well, I was gonna say, because in the Evening Star, he talks about how I had a thought here, shit, but he was talking about stars in their orbit shone pale through the light of the brighter cold moon. Oh, okay, right. He's saying that the moon pale, that they could pale in comparison to the moon. Mid planets, her slaves. Herself in the heavens, her beam on the waves. I gazed a while on her cold smile. Oh yeah, so he's talking about the moon. There passed as a shroud a fleecy cloud, and I turned away to thee, proud evening star, in thy glory afar, and dearer thy beam shall be, for joy to my heart is the proud part. Thou bearest in heaven at night, and most I admire thy distant fire than that colder, lowly light. So he's talking, yeah. So he's saying I like that better than the moon.
He likes Venus better than the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, part of the beauty, I know we want to move on, but one of the beauties of poetry is they're really made to be read over and over again.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
can't
it-
just
it
do it
just-
once and you
it-
won't get it.
It just seems much more profound and becoming more comprehensible as we read these other few.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I don't know the other one so well as the Israfel, but yeah, it's just it's worth people looking at it again and again and coming up with more thoughts and sharing it with us for future readings.
All right. So I want to thank all of you for getting on as always. And remember, next week, watch out, Lynn. Watch your step. And remember, next week, hello, Charlie Hess. Remember, next week we are going to go for 2 hours. I don't know if we're starting an hour earlier or if we're just going to go an hour later, but we are going to do the full Mystery of Marie Roget. So I'm letting you know now. So be ready for it because we are going all the way on it. So with that, I'm ending the stream.